You might be wondering why preachers who focus on the gospel of grace and the new covenant in their teaching always seem to end up talking about righteousness, that we are righteous by grace and not through works of the law, that is our own efforts. You might think, why do they always teach on grace all the time? Shouldn't they be teaching the whole counsel of God? Well, absolutely, but the question is what the whole counsel of God is referring to. I intend to come back to this subject in a teaching later on. Jesus did not tell us to go out and preach anything we find in the Bible. He said, preach the gospel. So we better make sure that whatever we preach or teach is the gospel, good news about Jesus' finished work, and not outdated and obsolete Judaism. We read in Romans 1, verse 16 to 17, "For I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first and also for the Greek." And look here, "For in it the righteousness of God is revealed, from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith." Verse 17 shows us that the gospel reveals the righteousness of God, or God's righteousness. What is God's righteousness in this context? It's referring to the gift of righteousness that we receive from God by grace because of the finished work of Jesus at the cross, as opposed to our own self-righteousness. In other words, if what we hear does not line up with God's free gift righteousness, that we are righteous independent of our performance, and that everything in the Christian life is by grace, it is not the gospel. I used to think that righteousness is only one of many subjects we can preach about. Also, there is faith, holiness, healing, how to live in victory, how to hear God's voice, obedience, etc. But I have come to the understanding that all these subjects, if preached from the New Covenant perspective, are connected to that we are righteous by grace through faith, not through our own performance. The book of Romans teaches us that there are two ways by which we can approach God, two kinds of righteousness, so to speak. The first one is self-righteousness. That is to come before God based on how good we have been at living the Christian life, how well we have prayed, read the Bible, fasted, etc. Don't get me wrong, all of these things are good to do if we do them for the right reason. But the question is, do I trust in what I have done or how good I have been in my relationship with God? If so, I'm coming to God based on my own self-righteousness. The other way to approach God is by God's own righteousness, which is the same righteousness that the gospel reveals. This means to come before God based on His righteousness and based on what Jesus has done. Again, this righteousness of and from God is the core of the gospel, and it is intertwined with every other subject we can preach on if we preach the true gospel, which always lines up with the new covenant. This means if we are not preaching the new covenant, we are not preaching the true gospel. The gospel is God's power, and the core of the gospel is the revelation of God's righteousness. That righteousness is a gift. Actually, that Jesus Himself is our righteousness. That means if we want people's lives to be changed, we need to preach Jesus as their righteousness. If we want people to live a holy lifestyle, we need to preach Jesus as their righteousness. If we want people to experience healing, we need to preach Jesus as their righteousness. If we want people to succeed in life, we need to preach Jesus as their righteousness. Can it really be this simple? Yes. The gospel is always so simple that the religious mindset takes offense. The religious and fleshly mind thinks, come on, it can't be that simple. Don't I have to do something? Aren't there 7 steps to victory or 10 steps to healing, etc.? No, there is only one step. Believe the gospel. believe in the finished work of Jesus, believe that you are righteous by faith apart from your own works. From that, everything else in our Christian lives flow naturally, just as blood flows naturally into our veins because of our heartbeat. The revelation of righteousness is the very heart and core of the gospel.